It's a bit of a meme, but nonetheless a meme that stems from some element of truth. When, for example, we talk about vegans and one makes the joke, don't worry whether or not you know somebody is vegan, they'll tell you within about 5 minutes. And if you were to observe your typical vegan, especially these days, one would get the sense of somebody who is effectively on a religious crusade. The vast, vast majority of vegans are not quiet about their veganism. They are very outspoken, if not outright militant about it. And one can ask all sorts of questions as to why that's the case. And I'm not picking on vegans here, it's simply a convenient example. And for that reason, I can mention many other examples. One thing I've observed over the years is that so many atheists who have deconverted from some religious position become just as fanatical and zealous as they were when they held certain religious beliefs. Now, I'm not an atheist who wears his irreligiosity on his sleeve. I don't even care much about religion one way or another, other than as an evolutionary or sociological phenomenon. But that's a very common thing. Many of the people who call themselves new atheists, amongst the rank and file soldiers, if you will, were people that were formerly religious, then deconverted, and then pursued their quote unquote atheism with a passion. And a passion that resembles, again, as I mentioned, the type of zealotry that they might have practiced in an earlier time. And they simply had to tell you and convert you, much like vegans simply have to tell you and convert you either how bad you are as a human being or how much healthier it is to be a vegan. And this applies to everything. It is what I like to call the evangelizing mind. Of course, this also applies to various religious positions and religious people. After all, the notion of the evangelizing person stems ultimately from what we traditionally view as religion, Christianity, Islam, etc., etc. But I want to point out some of these examples because it shows a consistency and application of the human mind and a tendency that we can observe as being recurrent in how human beings go about their business. That evangelizing is not unique or native to traditional religion. You can find it just about everywhere. You probably can even find it, albeit more rarely, in discussions of video games or discussions about certain genres of literature or entertainment. That some people have become very attached to some particular idea and run away with it. Now, as for myself, this has not happened to me very often in life. I had a very, very brief period when I was about 17 or 18 where I became infatuated with the work and literature of Ayn Rand, but that quickly dissipated. And I do think I had some of that, some degree, when I initially went through my red pill phase many, many years ago. But generally speaking, I as an individual don't tend towards these types of things, as I mentioned in my talk about being an outsider. But as an outsider, one observation I can make is that most people tend to do this, which is to say they have some belief system, some conviction, and they're very vocal about it. Why is that? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Whatever the particular conviction might be it religious, nutritional in the case of vegans, or irreligious in the case of some of these more evangelical types of atheists, they have a hankering to convert other people. And by converting other people, they add more numbers to their own rank and file. You see, I think that human beings have a baked-in tendency themselves to effectively believe in the ad populum fallacy, which is to say, the more people you have on your side, the more likely your beliefs are to be true. Mind you, it's not a conscious belief or conscious awareness in some fallacy from popularity, but rather a natural evolved psychological tendency we have to reaffirm our beliefs the greater the numbers of people on your side might be. And it's not unique to really anything. You could take any set of beliefs, any dogma, whatever it might be, and find people who will tend towards that and be devoted enough to the cause that they will preach and evangelize, etc., etc. Rare is the person amongst all beliefs that, frankly speaking, does not do that. Now, in my own case, and I've explained this in previous videos, I've been a lifelong atheist, but because of that, I've never had this passionate drive to somehow convert the masses to my beliefs. And to be completely honest, I'm not bothered in the slightest if somebody believes certain religious propositions that I might think are completely poppycock. If it serves their purposes, so be it. And so that's a mentality that I've had to understand as an outsider, this desire to evangelize, to convert, to make sure others believe as you do. I've seen this in recent years on YouTube and the internet more broadly in what I call the nutrition wars. Everyone has his particular form of nutrition, whether it's keto, vegan, carnivore, vegetarian, take your pick, and everyone wants to chime in and say, this is the one true way, this is the lighted path forward, and if you follow my diet, you will succeed and you will be healthy, and you will live a long and prosperous life. Because let's be honest, you're not going to gain the numbers if you say, maybe different diets work for different people. Maybe your diet is fine for you, but not so fine for me. Maybe moderation is a better thing in general as it applies to food and diet and nutrition. Maybe, and this is my favorite axiom of dieting, the best diet is the one you can follow, which is then no longer a diet, but a regime of eating that you find reasonable and compatible with your life. Gods forbid you say something like that, because that, one, doesn't sell books, two, doesn't get you views, and three, doesn't swell the numbers of the rank and file within your particular belief system. And this can be applied to everything. Religion, traditional religions are the most classic example of this. Each individual participating in these types of belief systems is reaffirming his ego the more people get on board. The more co-believers he has, the more secure he feels in his belief. Now, this is an entirely different matter from whether or not the propositions that people believe are true. I'm not talking about what's objectively true or factually. This is a completely separate discussion, but merely that people believe certain things, they believe that they're true, normally they do, and they want others to believe as they do because it reaffirms their own ego, offers them comfort, makes them feel, if one is to be honest, better about themselves. And into this mix, of course, are things such as confirmation bias. Classic example from traditional religion would be, I prayed for X and Y happened, and that's exactly what I wanted. And observing this as some inviolate pattern of the universe, that if you offer prayers to whatever deity you might believe in, those prayers will yield results. Same, of course, with the nutrition fanatics, the vegans of the world in particular. That someone went on a vegan diet and as a result their health improved or whatever, whereas the health improvement might have more to do with the fact that they dropped junk food, stopped eating processed foods, etc., etc. This is confirmation bias. We are constantly, subconsciously and consciously, looking for things that will reaffirm our own beliefs, in addition to the benefit of ego I mentioned and numbers prior. And that's how something like the halo effect works, right? We naturally prefer attractive people. We see attractive people, they might do a good thing, and then we think, attractive people do good things, therefore attractive people are good people on average. And this applies to everything. And indeed, in saying that it applies to everything, it of course also applies to the manosphere, and specifically MGTOW. Now, I'm going to go on record as being probably the only MGTOW content creator who unambiguously has stated in several videos, both past and present, that I don't think going your own way is for everybody. I don't even think it's for most men. I think it takes a very particular mindset of an individual man to, quote unquote, want to go his own way. And where I see a short-circuiting of this is, of course, this naturally evangelizing tendency in human beings, then apply it to, say, going your own way or MGTOW, as if swelling the numbers of MGTOW would somehow reaffirm your own status as a MGTOW, which again I think is rather silly, but it's the same game as I mentioned before, whether it's religion, belief systems, political, irreligious, whatever, take your pick. People naturally feel more comfortable in the choices they make when they have greater numbers surrounding them. But here's the real question, gentlemen. Does that make you feel better as an individual? I can tell you, quite personally, from my own perspective, that I care not a whit if the entirety of the rest of the world were going their own way or not. What matters to me is my own life, my own choices, my own decisions. So whether or not Bob Smith in some far-flung corner of Nebraska is going his own way doesn't matter to me. If you wish us to converse with me about it, we can talk about the topic. And it might be good that Bob Smith is doing that but ultimately it's not material to me as an individual. I gain no pleasure nor any benefit from swelling the numbers of MGTOW per se. It doesn't really have a direct application to my life. Even though, as I say this, I understand where this desire comes from and why there is an evangelizing tendency within the manosphere and MGTOW, just as there is in religion and nutritional doctrines and take your pick. Even though you might experience some pleasure, some form of confirmation bias, and some form of inner security by having others believe, at least allegedly, as you do, because it's very difficult to discern whether or not people believe as you do, at least in the details. That might make you feel good in some very abstract sense, but what is it doing for you as an individual? And more importantly, and I think this is an issue that can be addressed in a later video, do you honestly believe, to the best of your knowledge, that you pursuing this path is true, but in the context of your own self? So would going your own way be the appropriate path for a man who desperately wants children and wants to invest in a family? Almost certainly not. That would be a terrible way to go, because he would be going in a direction that is pretty much the opposite of what he wants in life. Likewise, it would be a terrible decision for a man who wants nothing more than independence, peace and quiet and freedom to get married and then have 4 children whilst having to maintain all these obligations and responsibilities. Again, these types of life choices are often contextual, as they are with the nutrition thing I mentioned earlier, and we need to be discerning enough to decide whether or not they're appropriate for us as individuals. Within the context of something such as the manosphere, it is important to realize that it's not for everybody, but it might be for you as an individual, and whether or not other people believe as you do, or believe that MGTOW is the ultimate path to freedom or what have you, is ultimately immaterial and irrelevant to you as an individual man. What matters is that you're doing okay on your own path, going your own way, not the way of the masses. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. If I'm still alive, I will check you out later. And as always, may the gods watch over you, and more importantly, may they give more than they take, because they have a nasty habit of doing that, don't they? Take care and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.